Welcome, and let me just start off by saying most of us probably wished or thought we'd find ourselves beyond this pandemic. Unfortunately, COVID-19 had different ideas, but throughout these difficult times, the city has had to continue to make important decisions on our behalf. This show gives you an opportunity to connect with your elected officials and, of course, for them to connect with you. Welcome to Ward Updates 2022, a series of one-on-one interviews with Ottawa City councillors and, of course, the mayor. We're going to discuss a number of important issues during these discussions, issues that are important to you, your family, of course, your neighbors, and your community at large. My guest today is Scott Moffatt, City Councillor for Ford 21, soon to be renamed Rideau-Goulbourn when residents go to the polls in October of 2022. And for those of you that aren't familiar, three-term councillor. Scott Moffatt has decided he will not seek re-election in 2022. So that's a good starting point for us, Scott. Let's talk about that decision and why now is a good time for you.
For me, it's always been, first of all, thanks for having me. In terms of the 3 terms on council, I think when I started this, it's kind of a time that I set for myself.
Okay.
I think when I go back to the 2010 election, I was actually asked this question multiple times. Term limits was a big discussion back then. I don't think it carries the day in terms of winning and losing, but ultimately it was discussed a lot. A number of my colleagues committed to 2-term maximums. For me, I said I don't believe in term limits. I think that the residents will make the best decision for themselves as to who can represent them. And if they want the person to serve longer, they'll serve longer. If they don't want them, they'll get rid of them. We've seen that multiple times in my time on council, that incumbents have been defeated. But for me, I felt at the time that I didn't see myself serving longer than 12 years. And 11 years in, it turns out that I was a decent prognosticator.
Scott, I mean, before we move on to talking about some issues on a personal side of things, we're about 22 months into this pandemic. It's been difficult for everyone. I just wanted to touch upon how it's been for you and your family.
Yeah, I won't pretend to be hard done by in this situation. Mm-hmm. I'm very fortunate. Obviously, I've had a job the entire time. My family's been healthy. We live in the rural area, so space has never been an issue for us. So I won't, I've considered it to almost be the reverse ice storm. During the ice storm, we were obviously heavily impacted. 1998, loss of power, really no access to certain things. Whereas all my friends in the urban area, they lamented the loss of cable television for 3 hours. with COVID,
so true.
The bigger impacts have been in the urban area. Just that whole space thing, being confined to your home, access to different services and whatnot, and the ability to maintain social distancing in a much more populated setting. I think we're fortunate in the rural area. We've managed to weather this storm quite well, but certainly it's always had impacts, just the schooling perspective with my kids coming and going. But again, I know a lot of people are far worse off than we are, than any of the councillors are. And obviously we have to consider that all the time when we make decisions as to going forward with everything and the impacts on residents.
Yeah, Scott, has it affected your ability to communicate with your constituents?
Well, we've certainly had to change how we do things. As a councillor, I've always really enjoyed getting out and having town hall meetings. We would always host a series of town hall meetings, going out to the various communities. I would host about 11 or 12 every couple of years and host those meetings in the community. We also got into the habit of doing bi-weekly drop-in sessions in various communities where we'd set up shop in Fallowfield Village or in Birds Rapids or in Richmond, Mantic, and we would invite people to come see us. So we've had to pivot a little bit, and we've done that by putting those drop-in sessions online using the Zoom format. We started doing town halls for various things online as well, post them on YouTube. We've gotten good reception to those. And during the pandemic, we also started a podcast. So our Ward 21 or 21 podcast, in order to get information out there, those have been quite popular. It's been a nice way of explaining issues, getting a bit more in depth than we can via Twitter or through the column or the e-newsletters. So we've done our best to get as much information out to residents as possible, knowing that we can't offer that in-person touch that we normally would in the past.
Let's talk about some good news in your ward. The Commonwealth Leaf Program grant. You've been very fortunate in getting a grant for a couple of different things. The one is the Richmond 200 Legacy Pavilion in the Richmond Fairgrounds. So first of all, maybe you could tell everybody about the Commonwealth Leaf Program itself, that grant, and what you're doing with it for that first one I mentioned.
Yeah, so first things first, I take absolutely zero credit in this. I was merely the messenger when it came to highlighting of what this program is. Commonwealth has this grant program that they offer, and anyone can apply for grants from across Ontario. And I think there was about 25 to 30 grants. I'm not sure the exact number that were awarded across Ontario, just recently announced. And there were only 2 in all of Ottawa. They both happen to be right here in Ward 21, one in Cars, and then the one that you mentioned in Richmond, which is incredible. I mean, these are grants that are driven by the community. So the community got together, filled out the application, sought support. I know they reached out to me to ask if I could just put a little comment online to suggest that to mention that I support it. Others did as well. And so to have both of the groups in this ward receive these grants, it's exciting, and I wanted to announce that in my recent e-newsletter and newspaper column, just so that residents are aware of what their community does on their behalf, because it's really all them. And in the case of Richmond, I know following the Richmond 2018, the bicentennial celebration, they had some leftover money. They wanted to create a bit of a legacy project for the village coming from that. So the fundraising efforts that led into the bicentennial celebration then fed into this legacy pavilion, which would be a pavilion that can be used for the entire community, but it's located on the fairgrounds. And it's some outdoor community space, amenity space that is needed for any small community. But it's an exciting project for the village of Richmond. Everyone's kind of gotten together on it in the village, and to see them get this grant and get a bit of extra money for their project is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the Cars Community Rink, right? That's the second project.
That's right. So some improvements, some upgrades to the cars rink. It's kind of a dirt patch right now, and they wanted to put a hard surface on it and upgrade it to make it a bit of a more versatile year-round rink. We're doing some other stuff right now. That's probably the ungodliest parking lot in the city, and it's thankfully it's being resurfaced this summer. We're hoping to get that. I just mentioned Richmond bicentennial. Cars is also celebrating a bicentennial this year in 2022, and hoping to get that parking lot repaved before they celebrate that this summer.
That'd be nice. Well, let's talk about other projects that are important to your ward, to Ward 21. What are some of the major infrastructure projects that are happening right now that are important to the ward?
Well, I mean, roads will always be a big one. I mean, every year, from the time I first got elected, roads. I remember my first year in office, we didn't resurface a single road in the entire ward in 2011. It was difficult. I'm just elected. I come in. I'm like, okay, 2011 budget. Let's start to. No. There's nothing in here for us. I will make something. No, I didn't make anything up. But so essentially, you try to work towards. You realize that we just aren't spending enough. I mean, it was indicative at that time that of the spending that we hadn't been doing into renewal. So over the course of the coming years, I mean, we did the Ottawa on the Move funding, which was an extra about $300 million into infrastructure renewal across the city. And every single year, we've tried to do a bit more and increase that contribution, knowing how important renewal is. I'm not talking about new roads, just talking about taking care of the stuff that we have. So in this upcoming year, or this year that we're in, we're going to see a good number of road projects done in the ward. About $7 million worth of infrastructure renewal is going to happen in our ward, and it includes the renewal of Malakoff Road. We have the southern section of Malakoff Road is in pretty rough shape between Cowell and Donnelly, so that'll get done. Mansfield Road's a funny one because
didn't you get that done a few years back? A portion of it, right? You got a portion of Mansfield done.
That's right. So Mansfield Road, the one portion was always was always abysmal and the other part was not bad. So we resurfaced the part that was horrible. I think back in 2013 or 2015, we resurfaced that other part. And all it did was illustrate that the other side was actually also bad. So
Right.
it just wasn't as bad as the part that we did. So that other part is now on the books for this upcoming year, and other projects, maybe not as significant, but McCordick Road, Pollock Road are being renewed as well. Purdy Road,
I think,
a section of Fallowfield Road.
Right, I was going to mention, Fallowfield, and I think, aren't you doing something along Second Line as well?
Yeah, so every year we try to invest a bit of money into gravel road upgrades. So we have, around the city, we have about 600, 700 kilometers worth of gravel roads. And generally, when people live on a gravel road, they often ask, when is it going to not be a gravel road? And we have a priority for how we do that, and it's a lot of times it's road connectivity. So if you have a gravel road that's in between two paved roads, it's going to be higher on the priority list. Second Line Road is quite a heavily used road. It's well populated. It's located between Century and Roger Stevens, runs right along the 416. It is scheduled for upgrade to a hard surface. It's about a 2-year process. The city goes in, we do some leveling work, we do some compaction work on the gravel that's laid down, the new gravel, bit of a a surface treatment on it, and then we actually come in the next year. So in 2023, the city will come in and actually lay a bit of asphalt on there and make it a proper paved road. It's not your similar treatment that you would do if you're building a whole brand new road, for instance. The work is standard, but it's consistent with the type of road it is, the type of traffic it sees, in order for it to sustain the traffic level that we see on it.
Well, speaking of traffic and roads, speeding is always a concern. I know I've talked to some of your other colleagues that live in, these rural sort of suburban areas, and they say it seems to be, one of the top 3 things that constituents talk to them whenever they reach out and ask them, what they're concerned about in their community. Speeding and dangerous driving happens to be one. Same in Ward 21.
Oh, always. I mean, I don't think it matters what community you're in, or what municipality, what province, what country you live in. Speeding is always going to be a big issue. Obviously, we wish people would be more cognizant of the speed they travel. I do believe that a lot of people that speed are also people that complain about speeding on their own road.
Yeah.
We have, we've tried to do things in recent years with the traffic calming program, to help bring awareness to speed limits, because in some areas we do know that people speed and they maybe don't know that they're speeding on that road. They don't know the speed limit. So we do the speed display boards, the painting the speed limit on the road, better signage, these types of things. The flex stakes in the middle of the road, they can be quite effective. I know some people really, really dislike them, but they do make a difference. They do work. So in areas where we know there's higher traffic, where maybe there's a school nearby, these are something that we use. I know we have them near St. Philip's School in Richmond, St. Leonard's School in Manotick, as well as near North Core Marlborough Public School on Church Street in the village of North Core, and they have been effective. They are proven to lower speeds in that area. So those are things that we do. Of course, they're not as we can't put them up in the winter months, but we do have them up between May and November of every year. So those are types of things that we work on to try to make sure that we're addressing the concerns from the community. Community-driven programs are good too. I mean, you have the Village of Manotick a few years ago ran a Keep It to 40 campaign, and it was kind of the idea where you are your own problem, so let's own it and try to resolve it ourselves, as opposed to always seeking assistance from government or speed enforcement. We know that when speed blitzes are on, often the people that get ticketed are the people closest to where the speed blitz is. It's closest to home, especially in residential communities. So we don't necessarily always want to go to that option of enforcement and ticketing. We will, of course, if we have to. But the best solution is to just lower the speeds and to hopefully get community to buy into that. That's the one thing that's interesting about I've never been super keen on photo radar. we talk about how much money we raise from photo radar, but to me, I sometimes feel that the more money we make, is it really working? Because
Right. Yeah.
you're trying to
That's
get
true.
people to,
Yeah.
right? You're trying to get people to
Yeah.
stop speeding in that area, but getting a ticket in the mail 3 weeks after I sped down that road isn't slowing me down that day. That's why I always feel that
Right.
when it comes to photo radar, we should make sure it is as visible as possible that you're coming into a photo radar zone. The most effective photo radar would make no money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you want, right? Yeah, it's not supposed to be there as a revenue source. It's supposed to be there as a safety measure.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we don't have any of those in our area. I mean, the volumes, we have a warrant system for how, or a system that we try to deploy those. I think you'll see more and more in the future. Unfortunately, they are near schools, and they're areas that we need them. Speeding likely won't go away. There'll always be an issue that has to be dealt with, no matter who the counselor is, no matter what jurisdiction you're in. But I think as you see photo radar come out more and more, you'll likely see a bit higher level of compliance, because ultimately it does hurt people. And the next time they're in that community, and these are, if you're putting these in front of schools, these are roads that you're likely getting the same drivers most day in, day out. So they will become accustomed to seeing that. The hope is that they don't speed up after they go through it, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've all seen that. Let's be honest. Another issue that's certainly important, especially in rural communities like yourself, is rural broadband. And I know that there's been an application put forward to the Universal Broadband Fund. Have you heard any word on that? And is that still, because you're seeing more and more people working from home. People are moving out to areas, like Ward 21, where they want a different type of lifestyle now that they're working from home, but they also need the proper infrastructure there so that they can work from home. Where does rural broadband stand in most of your ward?
Yeah, obviously it's a huge priority, especially you get outside of the built up villages. We do have a number of villages that have been connected to fibe. Obviously, they're enjoying quite decent internet, but once you step outside those villages, the connectivity becomes a significant concern, and we hear about it a lot. I know I have in the past met with representatives from ExploreNet and Bell and Rogers to talk about that. Or sorry, not Rogers. I can't seem to find anyone at Rogers that can talk to me. Hold on. Is there a way we can edit this?
No, it's okay. You can say the truth. It's all right. We're okay. As a matter of fact, I just spoke to the senior vice president of the region and how they are bringing in more connectivity. So the good news is my understanding is that it's coming from Rogers, but it is a serious issue.
It is, and I know there are a number of companies that did put in applications to the Universal Broadband Fund. I haven't seen the results of that yet. I know that some of them were thinking sort of outside the box, having a tower lit up with fiber, having a tower lit up and then running fiber from the tower into some more populated areas in the greater rural area. So it's, you're not running cable all through the rural area, but you are from the towers to get a bit more stronger connectivity, more reliable connectivity. And through Bell and the others to do that, I think is a good step in the right direction. We want to see that. ExploreNet's been good at putting towers up as well and providing better service. So we are seeing improvements in that. It's not perfect, but at the same time, what I've noticed through COVID is that reliability is not just a rural issue. The amount of times I'm meeting with someone that lives in Westboro or lives in Barrhaven, and they're also having connectivity issues. So broadband in general is an issue in terms of capacity and connectivity consistency. So we need to see improvements there, no question. But that is a multi-level government issue. Yeah. I know the province and the federal government are both working to try to ensure better supply to rural residents.
What kind of development are we seeing when it comes to residential development in Ward 21 at this time? I know there's been a tremendous amount of development moving into, your area. There's a delicate balance there, right? In the more rural areas, as developments start to sort of bleed into those more rural areas, there's a balance there because people have moved there for a specific lifestyle, Scott.
Yeah, we do see that. I think, in our ward, we represent to the two largest villages in the city of Ottawa. So Richmond and Manotick, and they are the two fastest growing villages in the city of Ottawa as well. And we expect much of the growth in the next 25 years to happen in those two villages. And it's a different type of development than what we've seen in the past because it happens on water and sewer. So it is going to be a more urban style development. It doesn't grow at the pace that urban areas will grow at. We all know that Canada and Barrhaven and Orleans and Riverside South are all going to grow a bit faster. It's just the demand. We do expect around 7% of the growth in the city of Ottawa the next 25 years to happen in the rural area. 5% of that is actually going to happen in Manotick and Richmond. So 5% of the overall growth. So it's actually only 2% of the rest of the growth happens elsewhere in the rural area. So we have to be cognizant of that and the connectivity within the villages and how we grow and making sure that we're not creating negative impacts on the established community when the new housing does come in. And we see a different variety of people coming in. People who, yes, they move out from the urban area sometimes, but also it's people who grew up in these communities and want to find a place to live and maybe can't always afford some of the existing homes. And when these new homes come in, maybe they come in at a lower price point. I mean, hard to say anything's at a lower price point these days,
Yeah.
but there are some that, I know that when the Kaivan development first launched in Richmond, there was an overnight lineup of people waiting to buy homes. And some of these people were from the community. They lived in Richmond. They grew up in Richmond. They wanted to buy a home in Richmond. And that's exciting too. It gives people more opportunities in these communities to be able to, have a variety of housing options in these areas, because quite often, I think of for years, Manotick was growing where it was only one style of house that was available. Now you're starting to see a lot more. I mean, we've had Highfield Place, which is a seniors residence for years, but we have other options now too. We have adult lifestyle bungalows. We have, town units and different things like that. So you have a few more options where you can, raise a family and you can grow old in the community. You don't have to leave the community. The amenities are there in town. So it's good. And Richmond's right there too. The other communities will always grow at a bit slower pace. There's only so many lots available in Cars. There's actually 500. There's a room for about 500 lots in North Core, but they're all sitting on active farmland. So I don't see those growing anytime soon, just by virtue of the way that the village boundary works. So we'll see a little bit of growth here and there in the rural area, but most of it's going to be in those two villages.
Yeah, and in those two villages, with the development that's coming in, Ottawa's, master plan that I've talked to many councillors about, this master plan with the idea of this 15-minute neighborhood, is a 15-minute neighborhood a possibility in those areas? Because we've developed them not in the right way as far as many people are concerned. You look at Canada and Orleans and Barrhaven and those kind of communities where, and I think Manotick is much the same too, where you have a development, then you have to get in your car. And, if you want to go grocery shopping or you want to visit the local business, there's no walkability. Are you going to see some walkability within those developments in those two villages?
I think if I had to look at the entire city, I think Manotick's probably the best example for walkability and services and amenities. I mean, we have about over 120 businesses in the village of Manotick, and it's a wide range of services and you can get. 25% of the businesses are actually healthcare related. So it's certainly somewhere where you can live and work and stay there. You don't have to leave the community. So it's a bit more, and also the businesses are centralized too. They're right in the middle of town. It was designed that way with the Manotick Mews and the grocery store and the old Manotick Main Street and the vibe there. Everything's sort of right in the middle of town. So it's all kind of walking from the outside in to get to what you need. A village like Richmond, it does have the services as well. The main plaza is a bit on the edge of town. But there is a brand new health center, medical center that was just built right in the middle of town too, right in the middle of what would be the new middle of town after the growth occurs in the coming years. So those are communities which do have a bit more of a complete community feel to them. Interestingly, you still can't buy a pair of socks in Richmond, but there is a Dollarama coming, and that should change that. That should change that for residents. You can get almost everything you want in Richmond, but that's the one thing that's been a challenge.
Gotcha.
And then communities, I think when you live in a place like Munster or Cars or North Gore, you do have, it's a known reality that you will have to commute to get places, and that's one of the factors when you come out here and you move here and you do that, and often a place like North Gore, they often will drive into Richmond or head down to Kemptville, and that's usually where they get their groceries and things like that.
And I think they're happy to do it because, as you said, they know what they're doing. They know the lifestyle that they're getting themselves into. That's what they crave. That's the type of lifestyle that they, the expectations are there. Scott, as you step away, you obviously there's a new face that's going to be in Ward 21, Rideau-Goulbourn, come October 24th, 2022. What advice would you give the next councillor of your ward?
That's a good question. So I don't know. I mean, I do talk to people who are interested in running, not just in this ward, but in other wards too. And I often talk about elections and what to think about in that case. I know when it comes to representing, the way I've done it, I always try to be straightforward and direct and honest with people. I don't believe that you should just tell people what they want to hear. I think it's important to be straight with them, and often it isn't going to be, well received. I mean, but I think it's important to, if you want to build trust and build a reputation of being an honest representative, I think they need to hear that from you. Like, those are important realities. But being connected to the community is huge. Going out there and talking to people and meeting people and staying grounded, understanding, why you ran in the first place, why you're here. It's very easy to get caught inside a City Hall bubble. The issues that we deal with at City Hall are not always the issues out on the ground out here. I remember going back to, we had a big debate at City Hall on taxi plates, but in the ward, hardly anyone cared about it. It was a huge, huge dramatic issue at City Hall and through council chambers and on Councillors Row about who was on what side. But ultimately, my inbox, it wasn't there. When I go out to community events, people aren't talking about it. So it's you have to know that there's that line between what matters on the ground in your ward, and then also make sure that you're paying attention to the city issues, but not let either side sort of dominate the other.
Yeah, there has to be. Yeah, there certainly has to be an understanding too of your constituents that there are important decisions to be made outside of our ward that I, as a councillor, have to be a part of. Scott, thanks so much for your service over the years. Really appreciate you as well spending time with us today.
I know, my pleasure. Good to talk to you, Derick.
All right. Yeah, same here. Thank you so much. And thank you at home for watching. This has been another in our series of one-on-one interviews with city councillors with our Ward Updates 2022.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
We're creating space for change.
Progress.
Equity. Reform.
This is a call out, a shout out, a reach out.
To help small businesses, charities, and organizations that support equity-deserving groups.
Let's promote progress
by promoting your brand.
We're all in.
Dedicating our production resources and media platforms
to shine a light